Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. We meet again, alhamdulillah, to continue with our study of the Book of Allah, the Sunnah of Rasulullah SAW, and some great Islamic personalities. Let's start off with the intentions of seeking knowledge and teaching. I intend to seek knowledge and to teach, to benefit myself and to benefit others, to remind myself and to remind others, to profit myself and to profit others, to urge adherence to the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to invite to guidance and to guide to that which is good, seeking the face of Allah, His pleasure, His closeness, and His reward. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let's continue on with Al-Fatiha. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم ارزقنا يا ربي فهم النبيين وحفظ المرسلين وإلهام الملائكة المقربين في عافيتي يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم افتح علينا فتوح العارفين وفقهنا في الدين وعلمنا التأويل وهدنا إلى سواء السبيل اللهم انفعنا وارفعنا وعرفنا بالعلم النافع وانفعنا به أنفسنا وأهلنا وأوطاننا وديارنا وجميع المسلمين يا إله العالمين الحمد لله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. We continue with our legacy. Alhamdulillah, we've got a beautiful legacy. All right, we are still with the book Saviors of the Islamic Spirit, and we are with Ibn Taymiyyah, Hafiz Ibn Taymiyyah. That's in the 13th century and 14th century. So it's early in the Islamic calendar, 7th century, and it's the 8th century, early 8th century. All right, we continue with his analysis of the Shiites and their hostility towards the Sahabas of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Let's look at Caliphate of Abu Bakr. Mistake that Abu Bakr. Election of Abu Bakr to the office of Caliphate has been the greatest bone of contention between the Shiites and the Sunnis. Explaining the significance of the elective principle regulating the appointment of the caliphs, Ibn Taymiyyah observes. We are aware that after the death of the passing on of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu took office, and amidst quite a number of unhappiness among some of the Sahabas, let's look at what's happened. It is worthy of note that the Caliphate of Abu Bakr and Umar is really a sign of the perfection of divinely appointed prophethood of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is what Ibn Taymiyyah observes to him as he sees it, that the appointment of Abu Bakr and then later Umar radiallahu anhu to the Caliphate as caliphs after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, is a sign of the perfection of the divinely appointment of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So their appointment in itself shows that Rasulullah was appointed as a prophet by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. they furnish a proof that he was not a king but an apostle of God. So the election, I mean the appointment itself shows that it's a proof that Rasulullah was not a king but an apostle of God. But the kings always prefer to pass on the scepter of authority to their nearest relations. That's always the case with kings, right? It is an inherited thing. It is not something which is passed on due to ability, right? Instead, but it is passed on due to relations. The kings is an essential step to save the kingdom from falling into the hands of others. So that was the reason of why the kings are taken over, right? They're appointed, because it is about having a kingdom, right? It's about ownership. So we all see the rulers and governors around us acting in a similar manner. The Seljukids and the sultans of Syria and Yemen pass on the kingdoms to their kith and kin. And this has been the practice followed by the Christian and heathen kings as well. So this is what is observed, right? When if they are kings, they will pass the authority to the nearest family members that's around, and it is seen also among the Christians and the Majusis, kings of the Majusis. The kings, that means the heathen would be those who have other gods, who pray to other gods. The kings of the Franks and those belonging to the progeny of Genghis Khan always ensure that the kingship remains within their families. So this is a tradition of kings, right? To pass the kingship over to their family members. They're always mindful whether the successor is of their family and blood or not. That was the concern, whether the one who succeeds is going to be a family member or not. But disregarding this universal practice, Rasulullah did not nominate his uncle Abbas or his cousin Ali or Aqil or any other relation like Rabi'ah ibn al-Harith ibn Abdul Muttalib, said that Rabi'ah would have been a cousin of Rasulullah because his grandfather is Abdul Muttalib, or Abu Sufyan ibn al-Harith ibn Abdul Muttalib. So this is another, so Abu Sufyan, right, also a sibling of Rabi'ah and a cousin of Rasulullah as a successor. And this shows that the Prophet was not guided by the regal precepts and conventions. So that shows that he was not under the rule of kings, regal precepts and conventions. Besides the relatives already named, there were also Uthman ibn Affan, Khalid ibn Sa'id ibn al-As, Abban ibn Sa'id ibn al-As, and other belonging to Banu Abdul Munaf, the most respected clan of the Quraysh and the nearest to the family of Rasulullah, but none of them was nominated to succeed him. All right, so we can see this is critical in the passing on of the leadership of Islam, to show that Rasulullah did not follow the conventional way of appointing his successor, right? Because Abu Bakr was not a direct relation of him, nor was Umar radiallahu anhu. There are a number of them who are actually rather close to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This proves that Rasulullah was a prophet and slave of Allah and not a king. He never bestowed his favor on anybody merely on account of the nobility of blood or relationship with him, but conferred his blessings only on grounds of one's faith and piety. Of course, this is not saying that the other Sahabas do not have the kind of faith and piety as Abu Bakr and Omar. There's a lot of other considerations taken, the other things being considered, like age and such. We have seen in the election of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu how he was elected, also Umar radiallahu anhu and Osman radiallahu anhu, and later on, of course, Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu took over. Sayyidina Uthman was elected because of his seniority compared to Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu, and also they have the same piety. Allah knows best their piety, right? Who is much more pious and have stronger faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is an indication for his followers that they shall not endeavor to establish a rule of any clan or family, but uphold the kingdom of Allah on earth. So this is it directs, right? It guides his followers that we should not be that the reign of kingship should, or the reign of power, the reign of authority should not be passed on to family or clan, unless of course the family is the best of all. They were not to follow even those prophets of yore who had been granted kingship by Allah, because Muhammad SAW was allowed to choose between kingship and the slavery of the Arab, and he chose to remain a slave and a prophet. So we see that yes, we have kings before. We have among our prophets there were kings like Nabi Dawood alayhi salam was king, Nabi Sulaiman alayhi salam was king, and Nabi Dawood passed on the kingship to Nabi Sulaiman alayhi salam, right? A son of his. Well, of course, sometimes having a son who's the best of all the people, right? Not that easy to actually choose if you are a prophet, but this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why it was ordained by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Caliphate Abu Bakr and Umar was thus a consummation of his teachings. So the choice of Abu Bakr as his successor and then Umar shows that it is part of the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It illustrates the following of the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Had he nominated someone of his own household as his successor, he would have been accused of accumulating wealth and riches for his progeny. The Shiites maintain the divine and indefeasible right of Ali for succession to the caliphate on the death of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They assert the right of Ali because he happened to be the cousin and son-in-law of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They also claim that Ali was expressly declared by Rasulullah as a successor under divine guidance. So these are the claims of the Shiites, the reasons why the Shiites insist that Sayyidina Ali should be the successor of Rasulullah. Sayyidina Ali was rather quite young at that time. Rasulullah passed on when he was about 63. Sayyidina Abu Bakr was around that age, about 60. Sayyidina Umar at that time should be about 50 odd. Sayyidina Ali was about 30 odd, because when he converted to Islam, he was only 10 years old, and Rasulullah was a prophet about 23 years old, so he should be about 33. So he's not that old, and of course there are other considerations also. Rasulullah has we have seen that he has chosen Sayyidina Abu Bakr to succeed him. Ibn Taymiyyah, however, points out that the claim of Ali's succession based on his nearness of kindred to Rasulullah bears resemblance to the conventions of the pagan past, when the Arabs were unduly predisposed in favor of their own clans and kins. So Ibn Taymiyyah saw that, if it happened that way, that Sayyidina Ali was appointed after Rasulullah, then it would be seen that Rasulullah is following the ways of the pagan past. Likewise, the unwarranted veneration of Ali and other members of the Prophet's household by the Shiites as partakers of divine nature is looked upon by Ibn Taymiyyah as impairing their dignity rather than being complementary to them. All right, here what we have here is that groups of Shiites revere, has great veneration for Sayyidina Ali and other members in the Prophet's household. Of course, we have the Imams. We have gone through the various. We have gone through the descendants of Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu, right? And of course, they are impeccable. They are really amazing descendants of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But to give them some kind of a divine nature, right, would be an insult to them. It's not a complimentary to them. It impairs, because they do not claim to have any form of divinity with them, right? It is they are true slaves of Allah, and they are great followers of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All right. So it's not something that compliments them, because they don't like to be in the spot where people venerate them and giving them some kind of a divine status. They don't want that. They just want to be true slaves of Allah. The excessive veneration of Hussein's progeny by the Shiites, says Ibn Taymiyyah, exposes them to a bitter trial, for they adulate them in a way which brings them into discredit. So the way they uphold, the way they aggrandize, right, the progeny of Sayyidina Hussein radiallahu anhu, right, shows that they have it is a trial on them, for they really give them excessive reverence, right, and which brings them into discredit. So it is not a good thing that they actually were doing to the descendants of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam via Sayyidina Hussein radiallahu anhu. The contentions of the Shiites about their claims to succession of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was also entirely unsupportable. In fact, had their biographical accounts by Sunni writers not been available, what the Shiites relate about them would have been more of a condemnation than a compliment to them. They do not have, actually what they have of the stories of the descendants of Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu are actually written by Sunni writers, and what the Shiites relate about them would have been more of a condemnation than a compliment to them. So as mentioned, right, the way they venerate the descendants of Rasulullah and the way they write about the descendants of Rasulullah, right, is somehow an exaggerated form of the reality of the descendants of Rasulullah. So it becomes a condemnation rather than a compliment to the way they wrote about the descendants of Rasul would cause them to be condemned rather than to be complimented. Al-Hili had profusely quoted traditions and Quranic passages to establish the merit and excellence of Ali radiallahu anhu and other imams of the Shiites, or to denigrate the first three caliphs. So this is, we saw this writer, he was a Shiite, and he writes extensively to prove that the three caliphs were not suitable to be elected as the successors of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ali was the only one that should be elected, and they, of course, the descendants of Ali radiallahu anhu, the various imams of the Shiites. We have gone through the imams of the Shiites. Of course, we do not see them as imam of the Shiites because we see them as great personalities, being descendants of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who kept on to the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we saw them being used by the various kings, right? And some of them were imprisoned, but we saw great virtue in the descendants of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ibn Taymiyyah subjected each of these quotations to a searching scrutiny in order to show that these had either been cited out of context or misinterpreted in favor or against someone according to the whims and prejudices of the author of Minhajul Karamah. We saw that, Minhajul Karamah. Some says Karama, Minhajul Kirama, right? Now, so he went through the various hadiths that claimed Sayyidina Ali's position as the successor of Rasulullah, and he saw that most of them had been cited out of context or misinterpreted in favor or against someone according to the whims and prejudices of the author. To give one example here, Al-Hili had cited the following Quranic verse. Yet loose the two seas they meet. There is a great barrier between them. They encroach not one upon the other. Which of the favors of your Rabb that you deny? Of course, we have here surah from Surah Al-Rahman. I do not indicate. There come forth from both of them the pearl and coral stone. So here we have Allah has let loose the two seas. The two seas met. There is a barrier between them. Right? This is concerning the barrier of the salt water and the fresh water, and they do not mix, they do not encroach not upon each other. So then Allah asks, which of the favors of your Rabb that you deny? They come forth from both of them, that means from the sea from the sea, the two seas, that means the water, the river, the fresh water, and the salt water, right, pearls and coral stone. All right, so this is his interpretation. Al-Hili then proceeded to expound or to explain So the two C's refers to Ali and Fatima radiallahu anhu, the barrier to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the pearl and coral stone to Hassan and Hussein. So this is how they actually interpret the verses of the Quran to suit their contention that the Quran actually mentioned Ali and Fatima radiallahu anha, Ali radiallahu anhu, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and their sons Hassan and Hussein radiallahu anhum. All right, Ibn Taymiyyah examined the exegesis of Al-Hili, the exegesis are the tafsirs of Al-Hili in some detail to show that the interpretation given by him betrayed agnostic tendencies of Karmatians and Batinites who invested the Quranic vocab with an enigmatic or allegorical sense. All right, so what he saw was that the tafsirs that were done by Al-Hili actually has semblance of the interpretation of the Karmatians and the Batinites. We saw them, right? They were trying to look into allegorical meaning, that means meanings, supposedly hidden meanings, and they interpret the various, they use the various vocab of the Quran in ways that are quite exaggerated, or with intent to put forth their own agenda. Ibn Taymiyyah then gave numerous reasons to disprove the contention of Al-Hili. He showed that the above mentioned verses were revealed at Mecca, while Hassan and Hussein were born in Medina. So this is one proof that this verse cannot be referring to Hassan and Hussein because they were not born yet. Again, these verses were elucidated further by another revelation which said, and he it is who has given independence to the two seas, though they meet, one palatable, sweet, and the other saltish, bitter. That's it, Ibn Taymiyyah. So this is from another part of the verse of the Quran, if I'm not wrong. That's it, Ibn Taymiyyah. If one were to identify Ali and Fatima with the two C's, one would also have to accept one of them as saltish and bitter. So he's saying that since you refer to these two C's, and Allah referred to these two C's again, one palatable, sweet, and the other saltish and bitter, because one is from this fresh water, so it's palatable and sweet, and the other one is saltish, right? And sometimes tend to go on to bitter. When the salt is too much, it actually become bitter, right? And it doesn't look nice to put Ali as one of them as saltish and bitter. Like, what's the barrier? If taken to mean Rasulullah SAW would amount to his disparagement. But the barrier is always an obstacle and an agency that keeps two things apart. Right? So this is how he explained. To interpret the barrier as referring to Rasulullah SAW would be not a good thing, because a barrier is anything that prevents meeting. So it's a barrier between Ali and Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu and Fatima radiallahu anha. That it doesn't go. It doesn't seem to be right, right? There's something wrong to put Rasulullah as a barrier between these two. Still more significant is the section in which Ibn Taymiyyah replied to the charges leveled by Al-Hili against the first three caliphs. Right, so Al-Hili is one of the scholars, Shiite scholars, who are against the three caliphs. And it's very interesting. Hamza Yusuf also, when he was introduced to Islam, or he got interested in Islam, he was more interested, he was inclined to the Shiite, or he was exposed to the Shiite ideology. And because for the fact that the Shiites are very, 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 very aggressive on the internet. Of course, that was like how many years ago? 40 years ago. It was about 20, now it's about 60. At that time, there were a little bit of internet here and there. And anyway, the Shiites were very, 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 very strong in their missionary work. So Hamza Yusuf was saying that if, as he get to know the ideology of the Shiites, he felt uncomfortable. He says, believing that Rasulullah is the Prophet of Allah, why would he want to take friends who are bad? And this is his best friend, right? Unless they want to claim that they are not his best friends, right? And also, Sayyidina Osman radiallahu anhu became his son-in-law twice. Why would he take Sayyidina Osman as the son-in-law of his son-in-law twice? When his first daughter passed on, he married Sayyidina Osman to his other daughter. This is I think Ruqayya and Kulthum. Both of them were married to Sayyidina Osman radiallahu anhu. He has got 4 daughters, Ruqayya, Kulthum, Zainab. Zainab was married to her cousin, the nephew of Sayyidina Khadija radiallahu anha, and Fatima radiallahu anha. Right, so it's quite absurd where Hamza Yusuf is concerned. Of course, if we look at it, we are not, Rasulullah do not teach us to curse, right? People, and here the Shiites are cursing the 3 Sahabas of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. By applying the sound method of criticism to the imputations of Al-Hili and supplementing it with accurate and reliable historical data, he showed how low a prejudiced mind can stoop to malign one's supposed enemies. So he proved from historical facts, right, true historical facts, that what Al-Hili did was really lowly. He has stooped so low to denounce the 3 Sahabas of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All right, let's go on to the Shiite beliefs. Ibn Taymiyyah also devoted a section of Minhajus Sunnah to the discussion of the Shiite tenets of faith, whereby he demonstrated the hollowness and contradictions of their beliefs. To give an illuminating illustration, he accuses the Shiites of having committed almost the same mistake as the Christians, who had endued Isa alayhi salam with divine attributes as the Son of God, and then depicted him as a meek and helpless preacher. All right, he was looking at the Christian ideology, Christian religion, and he saw him as supposedly a son of God. And then at moments where they actually, most probably, we didn't have seen the information here, right? That he wasn't really very as aggressive as he should be, and he was put to test by the various, by the many Jews who were against him for the fact that he tried to spiritualize the teachings, or he was sent, he was sent to spiritualize the teachings of Musa alayhi salam. We are aware at the time of at the time of Isa alayhi salam, right, the Jews were really in bad shape. They were really against the various teachings of the prophets of Allah. At that time, we had Nabi Zakaria alayhi salam and Nabi Yahya alayhi salam. Both were killed by the Jews, right, for going against what they were doing. And of course, there was an attempt to kill Isa alayhi salam. So he was seen as meek and helpless in some sense. The Shiites subscribe to contradictory doctrines, says Ibn Taymiyyah. So Ibn Taymiyyah analyzed their teachings, their doctrines, and see contradictions in their teachings. On the one hand, they magnify Ali's prowess and courage to such an extent that he appears to be the chief defender of the faith, on whose help even Rasulullah had to depend, and who was in that task no less than a partaker of divinity. So they show him as someone really powerful, someone really strong. Rasulullah himself got to turn to Sayyidina Ali to ask for help, and he seems to have some kind of divinity with him. But after Islam became strong and powerful, he grew so feeble and humble that he had to take recourse like a helpless and shaky man to smoothing down and denying his religious beliefs in order to save himself from persecution. Somehow this is in the literature of the Shiites, right? That Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu, we saw Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu and Muawiyah, the disputes between Sayyidina Ali and Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, and of course we saw the Khawarij. We saw that Sayyidina Ali had a lot of trials with people who were trying to reinterpret the Quran and things like that, the Khawarij especially, and then of course the people who betrayed him. Right, so somehow in their biography of Sayyidina Ali, they showed him as seeking the help of these various factions of people, and somehow, right, sort of lose some of his beliefs. This is the autobiography of the Shiites. The Sunnis, as mentioned before, the autobiography of the four caliphs were really strong and powerful. Then there appears to be no other man more spineless and important than Ali, although the fact is that his conversion to Islam had increased his courage of conviction. Right, so there's a contradiction. He seems to be spineless, but yet he's important, right? And his conversion to Islam has increased his courage of conviction. How could a man supposedly to be an ally of Allah in establishing Islam and subduing the non-believers fail to bring his valor to his aid, especially after embracing Islam, to vanquish those who were denying justice to him? So that was the contradictions that he found in the books of the Shiites. His adversaries were then fewer in number and less in strength than the pagans whom he had earlier subjugated. So at that time, he was out there fighting the various pagans, the many pagans with Rasulullah SAW. And moving on again, he was there fighting, right? He was the fourth caliph, so he was under the other three caliphs also, and yet he was not able to overcome the his enemies were more of the Muslims who in the process we saw has change of ideas and plans that which he tried to subjugate, but he couldn't. So Ibn Taymiyyah deprecated the lack of interest on the part of Shiites in the study of the Quran and the Sunnah, the performance of prayers and other religious observances, and the upkeep of mosques. So he saw that they are not people who really study the Quran and the Sunnah, and they are not inclined to doing lots of prayers. And I mean the 5 prayers and of course additional Sunnah prayers and things like that, and other religious observances and the upkeep of mosques. He traced the reason of this irreligious behavior to the Shiite beliefs, which carry the veneration to their imam so far as to raise them to the position of a divine person. So these irreligiosity of the Shiites is because of their great veneration of their imams. They put their imams on such a pedestal that the imams is almost considered as God, right? That their reverence to the imam is enough for them to actually go to heaven. Consider the theory of imamats, the imams, particularly the reappearance of the 12th imam who is believed to have concealed himself in some secret place till the day of its manifestation before the end of the world. Ibn Taymiyyah explained the untenability as well as harmful effects of that doctrine. So they have this belief, right? We have gone through, they got 12 imams, but the last of the imam was a young boy, right? And he has disappeared according to them. And he will reappear at the end of times, and he will lead the believers, right? And he will be from some narrations, he would be the Imam Mahdi, right? The leader who will fight together with Isa alayhi salam to fight the Gog and Magog, right? So he says it's not tenable. It is not something that we can be accepted, as it is harmful, as well as the harmful effects. So it's something not logical, not something which Rasulullah has mentioned or whatever. And also there are harmful effects of that belief that the 12th Imam is still alive, hidden somewhere, and he will reappear. He demonstrated through cogent reasoning and irrefutable evidences that the Shiite theologians generally follow the Mu'tazilites, although some of them have also been attached to the school of Greek philosophy. So there was a problem. There was this influence, right? And we know the Mu'tazilites are those who also into thinking, trying to find ways and means to explain things, right? And also the Greek philosophers also, we saw that some of them are not even believing in God and believing in the prophecy of the or believing in the prophethood. And we have gone through the various of and how we saw Hasan al-Ash'ari refuting the ideas of the Mu'tazilites. So they were influenced. So there was elements of influence of the Mu'tazilites and the Greek philosophers in their doctrines. Some of them, like the author of Minhajul Karamah, had tried to combine the knowledge of Greek philosophy and logical syllogism of the Mu'tazilites with their Shiite beliefs and doctrines to provide a defense for their religion. So that was what happens. It was corrupted by the by finding ways and means to make things logical, right? And of course, to gel with the Greek philosophers. However, for an erudite scholar of both the religious and secular sciences that Ibn Taymiyyah was, it was not difficult to refute the Shiite arguments point by point and to thoroughly expose their fallacies. So he was, as we know, very, very proficient in various sciences, and he has very strong memory, and he has a vast knowledge, and it was not difficult for him to expose the fallacies of the Shiite argument. Rejuvenation of religious thought in Islam. So you can see that Ibn Taymiyyah saw a need, right, to look through the teachings of Christianity and expose the faults in the teachings, and also the teachings of the Shiites and expose the faults in their teachings. Now come to rejuvenate the religious thought in Islam, to give life to the religious thought in Islam. As we know that we have, Rasulullah has mentioned that at the beginning of every century, there will be a mujaddid. Mujaddid means a reviver of the religion. Okay? And we see him as one of the revivers of the religious sciences. Ibn Taymiyyah was born at a time when the prevalent sciences, both religious and discursive, and particularly those like exegesis, traditions, jurisprudence, and the corpus of law had already been developed to an extent that the educated persons normally specialize in any one subject. So there's a lot of sciences out there by that time where he was born, right? Whether religious and non-religious, whether it's logical and all this, it was there, right? There's tafsirs, there's hadith, there's fiqh, jurisprudence, there's laws all being enacted, and books are being written. Lots of books are out there for people to study. And most people are not able to study every single thing because it's a lot. Sufficient literature enough to fill in a library had by then been accumulated on each of these sciences. So it's a lot of literature out there. There were also several scholars of outstanding intelligence and ability who were not only deemed an authority on their subject, but were also known for their wide knowledge and strong retentive memory. So he was not the only one. There were a few others, right, who were authorities on their subject and also have a wide knowledge and strong memory. That this is no mere speculation is proved by the writings of the doctors like Kamaluddin ibn Azmahkani, Taqiyuddin Ali ibn Subki, Shamsuddin al-Zahabi, and Abul Hajjaj al-Mizzi. So these are scholars. They were at that time scholars who would have been called a living encyclopedia for their extensive knowledge. In summing up the intellectual attainments of the age, however, a marked deficiency noted by every historian is that there was no mastermind who could not only compare with his predecessors in extensive knowledge, but could also make an expansion of their views and analyze and determine their worth and bring in his own verdict in those matters. So despite the fact that there are a number of scholars, right, who were very profound in their knowledge, has extensive knowledge, but the historians claim that there was no one who could compare with his predecessors in extensive knowledge, but could also make an estimation of their views. So there was no one whose knowledge was as great as the knowledge of the predecessors. Not only having that great knowledge of the predecessors, but also was able, with that kind of knowledge, was able to look through the views, analyze and determine their worth and bring in his own verdict in those matters. So in other words, the extensiveness of knowledge possessed by the then scholars was not matched by the depth and originality of thought of the preceding ages. So despite the fact they are very scholarly, very knowledgeable, but it is nothing in comparing them with those that were their predecessors. Thus, the scholars of the time, instead of investigating afresh the material already existing, were content to collect, edit, and interpret them in a series of commentaries and classified glossaries. So that's what they were doing, right? They were collecting, right? They were editing, they were interpreting them, right, in a series of commentaries and classified glossaries. So they didn't do an investigation of the material. So what is Ibn Taymiyyah's intellectual endeavor? A fresh intellectual element was ushered by Ibn Taymiyyah, who, besides digesting the existing knowledge of the time, presented it afresh with the fullness and critical guarantees behoving a creative thinker. So he studied, he analyzed. So he was the one who was able to come to terms with various writings, or even to criticize the various writings, and gave his point of view, right? So that there is a relook at the various knowledge of the people, of the predecessors. With his deep knowledge of the Quran and insight in the purposes and underlying objectives of the Sharia, so he has knowledge of the Quran, he has great insight into the purpose and the objectives of the Sharia and the principles of jurisprudence, that means fiqh, right? Rulings, jurisprudence be rulings. Ibn Taymiyyah could present whatever subject he chose to scribe with a marked authority and comprehensive. So that is the kind of knowledge he has, right? He wrote, he presented because of this great knowledge, and people could see that he was able to analyze the various writings of the predecessors and to form and to criticize accordingly. There is not a single composition by him whose range is not so wide that it could not be described as an encyclopedia on the subject, bringing into its compass all the existing knowledge of the time and opening new vistas of vision. So what he does was that when he took up a book to look, or a piece of writing by the predecessors, right, he would bring in all the various knowledge that he has that would that is seen, that he saw as related to that particular piece of writing by a scholar. So he bring it into its compass all the existing knowledge of the time, and he opened new vistas of vision. He was able to encourage people to look at various points of views of the various of the knowledge that he puts forth from his predecessors, and he brings in the Quranic ideas, whatever, all the various knowledge that he has. So it's really very profound. We have already discussed in some detail two of his works, namely Al-Jawab al-Sahih and Minhaj al-Sunnah, but there are still more outstanding monographs on other subjects such as Kitabul Nubuwat, Ar-Raddu al-Mantaqayin, and Istida'us Sirat al-Mustaqim, to name only a few, which combine comprehensiveness with critical thinking and provide food for thought to their readers. So those who are able to study the books of Ibn Taymiyyah could understand the kind of knowledge he has, right, in combining comprehensively, right, the critical thinking and giving people more scope to think about. Exegesis of the Quran. The principal object of Ibn Taymiyyah's literary endeavors was exegesis of the Quran, an interest so predominant that its influence can easily be seen in his almost every work. So he has profound knowledge. He studied the Quran a lot. He looked at the various tafsirs of the Quran. He wrote tafsirs of the Quran. So he has a very strong, profound understanding of the Quran in itself. Whenever he quotes any verse from the Quran in his writings, he does not proceed further without giving his interpretation. So that is his knowledge. It's a great knowledge of the Quran. So when he writes any articles, right, then he comes across a verse of the Quran, he would not stop there. He would go on and explain that verse of the Quran in detail. According to his disciples, his commentaries of the Quran run into as many as 30 volumes. Unfortunately, none of these works survive today, except in fragments consisting of the exegesis of certain Quranic chapters. So his work, 30 volumes, were all gone, not all gone, some of them are left behind, a few surahs, right, explained by him. And these volumes, when available today, they would have undoubtedly constituted one of the most valuable collection on the subject, displaying his remarkable critical faculty and acuteness of thought. Right? So it's a sad thing. Allah knows best why his works are lost. Right? Most of his works are lost, especially his works on the tafsir of the Quran. It will be some. It will be a piece of, a great work for the later scholars to look at. The commentaries of Surah Al-Mustaqim, Mu'awwidhatain. This is Mu'awwidhatain, would be the Al-Falaq and An-Nas, and An-Nur, along with the exegetical excerpts taken from the different works by Ibn Taymiyyah, published recently, exhibit his comprehensiveness, mental greed, reformative zeal, the developed sense of interpreting the scripture in accordance with the current needs of the time. So these are the various commentaries of him that's available, right? Surah Al-Ikhlas, Surah Al-Falaq, Surah Al-Nas, and Surah Nur, right? And also in his other works, as mentioned, when he writes on any subject, when he comes across a verse of the Quran, he would go on to explain that verse of the Quran in detail. So by the works that were published recently, right, the scholars saw how comprehensive his writing was and how powerful his mental greed, right? He is able to think and to analyze and to bring in various topics together, and his desire to reform and the developed sense of interpreting the scripture in accordance. So he has a sense of interpreting the Quran according to the needs of the time, to bring them to understand that this Quran can be used during that time. Because some people, like now also, we've got people who doesn't really have much knowledge of Islam or the Quran, usually, right? And saying that, oh, the Quran was written 1,400 years ago. Surely it is not applicable now. Right? Of course, it's not true. Everything in the Quran is applicable. We believe that it is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it is a last message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything in the Quran is applicable to us in this so-called modern age of advanced technology. He also wrote a monograph on the principles of exegesis of the Quran, which is perhaps the first dissertation of its kind on this subject. So he gives the various principles on which you can make a tafsir of the Quran. And it's not easy to make a tafsir of the Quran. You need to know the language of the Arabs at that time, and the uses of certain idioms, the uses of certain words. And so he comes out with the rules and regulations on how or what should be, what it takes to interpret the Quran. So he was the first one to do that. The surpassing interest of Ibn Taymiyyah lay in the science of exegesis was acknowledged by his contemporaries, who, on his death, invited the people to offer the funeral prayer of the commentator of the Quran. So he was well known as the commentator of the Quran. All right, so that's about Ibn Taymiyyah. A lot of work on Ibn Taymiyyah. We continue with Wafi through a thorough commentary of the 40 Nawawi Hadith. We're still with the 19th Hadith, which was a very long commentary. We'll just recite it. Inshallah, be blessed in reciting the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Aunullahi ta'ala wa hifdhuhu wa nasruhu wa ta'yiduhu. An Abil Abbas Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu qala كنت خلف النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يوما فقال يا غلام إني أعلمك كلمات احفظ الله يحفظك احفظ الله تجده تجاهك إذا سألت فاسأل الله وإذا استعنت فاستعن بالله واعلم أن الأمة لو اجتمعت على أن ينفعوك بشيء لم ينفعوك إلا بشيء قد كتبه الله لك وإن اجتمعوا على أن يضروك بشيء لم يضروك إلا بشيء قد كتبه الله عليك رفعت الأقلام وجفت الصحف. رواه الترمذي وقال حديث حسن صحيح. وفي رواه رواية غير الترمذي احفظ الله تجده أمامك تعرف إلى الله في الرخاء يعرفك في الشدة واعلم أن ما أخطأك لم يكن ليصيبك وما أصابك لم يكن ليخطئك واعلم أن النصر مع الصبر وأن الفرج مع الكرب وأن مع العسر yusra. So it's a very long hadith. We have gone through the meaning of this hadith. We have gone through some of the analysis of the hadith, right? We just recap what we did. We must be in control of our emotions when facing calamities. So this is about patience. And patience, as we understand, is to be in control. That's what it is, right? To control our emotions, to control our thoughts, to control our actions, right? Whenever something happens just then. So this is facing calamities that we have. When harmed by Allah's creatures, we must be patient. So these are trials in our lives, calamities, hold ourselves in times of calamities, hold ourselves in times of moments when people, human, animals, whatever, right, cause harm to us. So we must hold ourselves again, ask ourselves what is the best approach, right, to react in such situations, so much so that Allah looks at us as people of patience. Patience in da'wah, when we want to call people to Islam, lots of stumbling blocks, lots of barriers, lots of criticisms you will come across, and lots of abuses also. Rasulullah also, we saw how he was abused, how he was criticized, how he was mocked, right? And he held himself very well. So that's what it is, to hold yourself well, and then enjoying the right and forbidding the wrong. Not easy to encourage people to do good and to stop them from evil, because they would be very defensive for their states, and you should be trained to know how to handle such situations where you would be seen as one with patience. All right. Next one. So we had all those moments, conditions or situations in which we have to be patient. Patience in the field of battle and fighting the disbelievers. So here we have seen that this commentator has brought in many verses of the Quran, right, to prove that the various instances in which we are expected to be patient. Jihad is where death and danger are expected, right? When we go out to fight, we are aware that we might be facing death and also danger. And souls dislike it, right? People don't like to be in danger. People don't like to be to die. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, Kutiba alaykumul qital, has been ordained on you fighting, wa huwa karhul lakum, and it is hateful to you, right? Fighting is prescribed for you, even it is hated by you. So yes, we don't like, but Allah expects us to fight, right? Going to battles. Therefore, the believer who has been obligated to meet Allah's enemies on the battlefield must arm himself before anything else with patience and be more patient and forbearing than his enemies. So he must know how to control himself in different states, in different emotions, in different ways. He must strategize. He must be well equipped. He must have his things, and he must be strong enough, right, to he has to be very fortified in himself, right? Persevere in moving on, fighting for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sabiru wa sabiru wa rabitu wattaqullaha la'allakum tuflihun. O you who believe, be steadfast, be supreme in steadfastness, be firm on the battlefield, and have taqwa of Allah, so that hopefully you will be successful. So the believers are called upon here. They are reminded to have patience, isbiru, right? Be patient, wasabiru, and be supreme in steadfastness. That means hold on to it, right? Encourage others to hold on to it, right? And be firm, warabitu, be firm on the battlefield. Wattaqullah, and have taqwa of Allah, la'allakum tuflihun, so that hopefully you will be successful. So to be successful at war is that you must have patience. You must know how to hold yourself. You mustn't get angry. You mustn't boil when you see things are not proper. You move on believing that Allah is there to help you. You must have taqwa. You must do things according to the way Rasulullah has identified to us, to them, right, the various ways of fighting at war. No mutilation of bodies, no cutting of trees, no injuring of weak ones like ladies and the babies and the children and the old ones, sick ones. Allah the Exalted joined between jihad and patience when He said, so both jihad and patience must come together. He said, ثُمَّ جَاهَدُوا وَصَابَرُوا. Then they go and they fight and struggle and they hold themselves. They are patient. And they did jihad. Jahadu is jihad and remain steadfast. So they are people, because of this kind of qualities that they have, right? It was not difficult for them to fight in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They do things for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They hold their thoughts and their actions, whatever they are doing for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We've seen instances, various narrations, right, during war of how strong and courageous our believers were because they are able to hold themselves, right? And for example, also they are very we have during the time of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, wars were being won of one after another, and the battles were all led by most of them were led by Khalid ibn Walid. And Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu one day decided that Khalid ibn Walid should stop being the leader and should move back and let someone else take over from Khalid ibn Walid. And Khalid ibn Walid was well trained in that he did not get angry with Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu for demoting him in some sense, right? But he saw it as a need to obey the instructions of the leader, and that was Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu. So that was a kind of thoughts they have. They do not get angry. They have got very disciplined, very principled people, right, of Sahabas of Rasulullah. He has also made patience a condition for overcoming and subduing the enemy. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned all these things. You want to overcome, you want to subdue the enemy, then you must learn to hold yourself. You cannot get violent. He has said, إِيَّكُمْ مِنْكُمْ عِشْرُونَ صَابِرُونَ يَغْلِبُوا مِئَتَيْنِ. If there are 20 of you who are steadfast, they will overcome 200. So he's encouraging on people, you need to hold yourself down. And people at war, they get very emotional, they get very angry, and they start shooting and they start pillaging, they start doing all kinds of nonsense. Not right. You need to hold yourself. Right? You must be focused on why you are fighting, and you fight for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah is telling that you will have that strength. 20 of you will be able to overcome 200. It's 10 times your number with patience. That's what it is. Then he mitigated the difference and said, فَإِيَّكُمْ مِنْكُمْ مِئَةٌ صَابِرَةٌ يَغْلِبُوا مِئَتَيْنِ. And he says that if there are 100 of you who are steadfast, they will overcome 200. So it looks a bit different. 2 overcome 100, that's 50 times, right? 20 to overcome 200. So 20 to overcome 200, right? So then the other one is 100 overcome 200. That's double. The other one is 10 times. But it depends on a lot on their patience and how strongly they adhere to the teachings of Rasulullah. So how strongly they are sincerely doing things for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The more sincere they are, the stronger. The stronger is their fortitude, their perseverance, and their steadfastness. He made his help and support by way of the angels of the sky, conditional on patience, when coming to blows with the enemy. So he will only send support and help via the angels only when the Muslims are patient. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bal in tasbiru wa tattaqu wa bala in tasbiru wa tattaqu wa ya'tukum min fawrihim hadha yumdidkum rabbukum bi khamsati alafim minal malaikati musawwimin. Yes, indeed. But if you are steadfast, so you need to be patient, sabar, have taqwa, and be always aware of Allah's rights and honor Allah, and they come upon you suddenly, so here you are steadfast, taqwa, and they attack you without your anticipating it, your Rabb will reinforce with 5,000 angels, clearly identified. So Allah will send the angels to you, right? But you need to have these characteristics of taqwa and patience and sabr and likewise he subhanahu wa ta'ala made the patience of his believing friends a condition for foiling the plots of the disbelievers, causing their plans to fail and then not being harmed by them. So again, important is patience. Then you would foil the plots of the disbelievers and it would cause their plans to fail and then not being harmed by them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, Wa in tasbiru, and if you are patient, wa tattaqu, and have taqwa, la yadurrukum kaiduhum shay'an, inna Allaha bima ya'maluna muhit. But if you are steadfast and have taqwa, their scheming will not harm you in any way. It stops here actually. The meaning here, right? La yadurrukum kaiduhum shay'an, inna Allah, surely Allah, with whatever they do, He is all encompassing. So don't worry about anything. You just do your part. Be be right in the way you fight. Hold yourself. Do not allow your emotions to get the better of you. Use your intellect in observing of the various teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All right, we'll take a break here. A bit more, a lot more actually. We'll most probably try to finish this hadith today, not doing the Quran. All right, we'll take a break here and we'll come back in 10 minutes.
These are gatherings that nourish us at the very, very, very depth of our being. These are gatherings that will be a means for a Muhammadan breeze to come when we most need it. We were listening recently to a post that will come out soon, inshallah ta'ala, about one of our teachers telling a story about an individual who was having difficulty in his deen and made an intention to actually renounce his religion. But then at night, he had become accustomed to sending the salawat upon our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he decided to still do those salawats, and he started to then wrestle internally. There was a wrestling match between his heart and his mind. And he said that if I'm going to renounce my religion, that means that the Prophet Muhammad is not telling the truth. And he says that is impossible. And it was remembering the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam in that moment and reflecting upon him and knowing with absolute conviction that he is true and that he tells the truth and everything that he brought is true and everything that he informed us about is true, is what saved this individual. And this is what happens when we're in times of most need, in the most subtle of ways that you can never possibly imagine. There is no possible way to put a price on gatherings of remembrance, on these moments of purity. These are what are going to really, really matter when we really, really need it. And as we've heard, is that even though we're only a few people here from different places, this beautiful cornucopia of beauty, which is ultimately a sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we should make the intention to be here on behalf of our people, for other people that live in these lands that don't have the ability to be here. And then each intention that we make to be here for our people, there will be a channel that opens up for them to be able to receive. And that this is what we hope, is that these lands become fertile for the sunnah of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Make the intention when you hear the Mawlid, you're saying marhaban, marhaban, ya nur aini, and you're welcoming the light of your eyes. Without him, we would be blind, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He is truly the light of our eyes, outwardly, and of our essence and our entire being. Salawatu Rabbi wa salamu alayhi. Make the intention to welcome the messenger to these lands on behalf of our people. Make the intention to host him in these lands, metaphorically speaking, through the coming of his teachings. The way that Sayyidina Abu Ayyub al-Ansari hosted him, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when he reached Medina. Make the intention to serve anyway. In the beautiful poem we heard last night from Sayyidina Nada, is that to welcome those who, like those blessed little girls did, and to serve, even if it be holding the saddlebag, whatever it might be. This is true izzah, this is true honor. Everything in creation wishes to serve the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And in these beautiful lines of poetry, the Shaykh Yusuf al-Nabahani said when he was speaking about the sandals of the Rasul, which we wear on our head, because ultimately is that those blessed sandals ascended above the seven heavens. Araratsi hadal kawn na'lu Muhammadan alat فَجَمِيعَ الْخَلْقِ تَحْتَ ظِلَالِهِ, is that he ascended sallallahu alaihi wasallam above the seven heavens, and he was wearing his blessed sandals, and all of creation was beneath him in a real way. لَدَى طُوَى مُوسَى نُودِيَ إِخْلَعُوا وَفِي مَقَامَ الْقُلْبِ لَمْ يُؤْمَرْ بِخَلْعِ نَعْلِهِ. That Moses in the sacred valley of Tuwa was asked to take off his two sandals. فَخْلَعْنَا عَلَيْكَ إِنَّكَ بِالْوَادِ الْمُقَدَّسِ طُوَى. You're in the sacred valley of Tuwa. But our Prophet in the station of proximity was not asked to take off his two sandals, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And there's deep, deep, deep spiritual significance in that. The maqam of Sayyidina Musa is great, but no one was as close to the Lord of the heavens and the earth like our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then he goes on to say that mithalan, that this image that he himself that created of how the sandal actually looks, this was an honor for him to serve it. That he goes on to say is that the tijan of the muluki hawasidu is that tamanna maqam al-qurbi minhu al-faraqidu, is that the stars wished that they could be like the dust underneath these blessed sandals of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the crowns of kings were envious. They wish they could as well. We will realize that one of the masters of all these adab is Shaykh Yusuf al-Nabahani. He was someone that mastered abdan. Ana abdun li abdihi wa li abdil abdi abdun kada bi ghayri intihai. I am a servant of his servant of a servant of his servant's servant, and thus without any end. This is the way these people are. They realize the sharaf of the risala, the honor that the message that our Prophet brought, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But the secret to all of this is opening up your light, your heart to the light of Sayyidina Muhammad, whereby which that you have a deep, profound, intimate connection with him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you start to recognize that he is the Sirat al-Mustaqim. He is the straight path. And he is, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Urwat al-Wuthqa. When everything else fails and you become confused, and even for people that, may Allah protect all of us and our children and progeny to Yawm al-Qiyamah, ever to even have doubt in their religion, the way back is in reflecting upon our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that he is that Urwat al-Wuthqa, lan fisama laha, that will never ever break our faith in him and our belief that what he brought was true, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when that comes into the heart, then you start to have people of substance, You start to have people that then have something to offer. You have people that will then be drawn to that light. And if there was people that used to see light on certain ancestors of the Prophet's foreheads because of him being in the loins, anything that is connected to that light will draw people. And this was even reflected in his blessed father, Sayyidina Abdullah. What about then when we open up the light that of his teachings to come into our heart? People will recognize that. And they will realize that this is something that we all need. And this is what we come together for, with big intentions. Not because of anything that we have, but because we know the generosity of our Lord. We know the generosity of our Lord. It exceeds anything that we can possibly ask him for, subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we are taught to place our expectations and make them high in his bounty and in his fadl, not in our acts. And that our hope is by him giving us tawfiq to just do that, is that there will be that a divine outpour from his blessings upon us, not just for us, but we hope that it extends to our family members and our loved ones and our friends and our neighbors and other people that are around us. And then this will translate into, in a very real way, each and every single one of us, inshallah, living up to our Adamic potential in sharing the blessings of this faith with the people that are around us. Nothing is more important, and nothing brings more happiness to the heart of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam than serving his blessed deen, embodying those realities and then serving the deen day in and day out with every single interaction, every single person that is that you meet, praying for people, having good character when you see people, living up to what our Prophet taught us sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is what we want, so that when we come to him, is that this is what we want him to do. And in closing, this is what the Prophet did at the very end of the life of the Sahaba. After he nurtured them and looked after them and trained them and taught them and raised them in his blessed, beautiful way, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they became who they became, the best people of all after that the prophets and messengers. No one was like the Sahaba. They were the very best hearts of all on earth. And they were the ones chosen to be with Sayyidina Muhammad. And in that blessed hadith in Sahih Bukhari, when Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq is leading the prayer, and you can imagine the companions in that blessed masjid were all praying in the khushu' and the reverential awe that could be seen on the limbs in their stillness. And then the Prophet ﷺ pulls back the curtain. And some of them almost broke their prayer because they were so excited that they thought the Prophet ﷺ was well again, that he was going to come back in and pray with them. And one of them noticed is that the Prophet was smiling when he pulled back that curtain. He was smiling. And think about the profundity of meanings behind his smile, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it had been revealed before that, Al-Yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum, is that I have perfected your religion for you. I have completed my blessing on you. And I am content to have Islam as your religion. That had already been revealed. This was very, very late. This was just before he passed. But that smile indicated is that our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam بلغ الأمانة, is that he had conveyed the trust, وَنَصَحَ الْأُمَّةِ, and that he had advised his blessed ummah, and they had embodied those realities. And that smile indicated now that he had fulfilled his mission. إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحِ وَرَأَيْتَ النَّاسَ يَدْخُلُونَ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ أَفْوَاجًا فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَاسْتَغْفِرْهُ إِنَّهُ كَانَ تَوَّابًا. Is that he had conveyed the mission, and that those verses indicated the qurb of the ajal of the Habib, that he was going to return to Allah soon, because he wasn't meant to be here forever on earth. This world is not worthy of that. But when you attach your heart to these meanings, it makes it easier to get by and to be patient with whatever is afflicting us, all of the difficulties that we are going through. This is the nature of dunya. But one of the greatest things of all that can get you through is when the love of Sayyidina Muhammad is unlocked in your heart. And you start to remove this rust so it starts to flow. And then it starts to fill you up. And then you become detached because you realize you can't remain in the world and ultimately be with your beloved. You might see him from time to time here in this world. It's possible to see him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We've heard that. But you can't really meet with him in the truest meaning of the word meeting until you return to Allah. And this is what helps us get through. And this is what we all hope for, is that Allah Ta'ala bless us in moments like this, that there be tazawwud, and that we receive provision that helps us at that time when we need it most to get through this world and to remain firm, and to bless us to be able to meet our Lord in a way that is pleasing to him. And then when we encounter Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is that we encounter him and he be smiling and he welcome us and he be happy to see us. And we be from those brothers that he spoke about, that he loved and he longed for. Those people that have sacrificed anything to have been with him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May we be among them, and may we be from the elect of them, and may we spend our lives in doing what is most pleasing to him, subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to his blessed messenger, and to be means for bringing life to the deen of Sayyidina Muhammad, and the sunnah of Sayyidina Muhammad, and all of the intention, and all of the individual teachings of the deen of Sayyidina Muhammad. May Allah ta'ala give us tawfiq, and bless us in all of our affairs. And inshallah ta'ala protect and preserve us all until the day we meet him. May the very last thing that we say we exit this world be La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, completely actualize its meanings inwardly and outwardly. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi sallam. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Even though it's getting late, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, good reminder from Ahya Rodas. Remind us of our love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Continue on with the commentary on the hadith on battle, importance of patience during fight with these believers. This means that failure can happen to the believers, and Allah, the Exalted, can abandon them when they do not show patience, and especially when there are other factors that necessitate it. Right, so Muslims can fail. Muslims can be defeated if Allah abandons us. When is it? When we do not show, we are not able to be in control of our emotions and to align our emotions to the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu idza laqitum fi'atan fathbitu wa dhkurullaha katsiran la'allakum tuflihun. Wa ati'u Allaha wa rasulahu wa la tamaza'u fatafshalu wa tadhhaba rihukum wasbiru innallaha ma'as sabirin. You who believe, when you meet a troop, stand firm and remember Allah, so that hopefully you will be successful. Two conditions, right? Firm, stand firm, right? Hold yourself, stand firm, do not run. Be firm about what you are and remember Allah. Wadhkurullaha kathiran, lots of remembering of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Perhaps you will be successful. When you remember Allah, Allah will bring success to you. Stand firm, do not run away. Obey Allah and His Messenger, and do not quarrel among yourselves, lest you lose heart. Since obey Allah and the Messenger, and don't quarrel among yourselves, because that will weaken you and your momentum disappear. And be steadfast, that means be patient. Allah is with the patient. So hold ourselves well. You know, sometimes when we are with people, we might quarrel with people. All don't do, because that is not part of patience. How frequently is it that you read in the Quran, Allah loves the steadfast and Allah is with the steadfast? He, the glorified, has made it clear that it is from the nature of those who follow Rasulullah, the messengers, to be patient with whatever afflicts them in the fields of battle, such as being killed or wounded, and not to be weak or lonely. So this is what it is. The strong ones we have in the Quran, the army that was led by Talut, right? And how strong they were, or they were few, they had faith, and Allah will be with them. They always remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's very important. In your fights, your mind is always knowing that Allah is the one who gives success. And whatever you do is doing it with following the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If they do that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring them to his love and his victory. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وكأي من نبي قاتل معه ربيون كثير فما وهنوا لما أصابهم في سبيل الله وما ضعفوا وما استكانوا والله يحب الصابرين. Many a prophet has been killed when there were many devout with him. When there were many devout with him, they did not give up in the face of what assailed them in the way of Allah. Nor did they weaken, nor did they yield. Allah loves the steadfast. So that is what it is. Description of the people who are devout, right? People who are close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They do not give up. That's what's important. When they are attacked in the way of Allah. Nor are they weakened. So this is all about patience. Nor do they give up. Allah. They yield. Yield means to surrender. Allah is with Allah loves the steadfast. So this is examples of steadfastness. Don't give up, right? If you continue fighting, even when you're attacked, you don't become weak. You don't lose. You don't lose hope. You don't become frightened, right? And you do not surrender to them. These are signs of steadfastness. The fruits of patience. You can deduce from the aforementioned that the fruits of patience include contentment. Those who are patient, they will be blessed with contentment. They will be blessed with tranquility. They will be blessed with feeling happy, realizing might. They will realize that they've got power because Allah is with them. They will realize that they have honor and goodness. And they will be deserving of Allah's support as well as his victory and love. So whoever holds themselves in whatever state they are in, right? Things are difficult, they are harmed, they are abused, they are mocked, right? But they understand that replying back, attacking back is not going to help in any way, right? They move on. People might see them as cowardly, but actually they are wise people. They deserve the support of Allah. In the long run, they will be successful and victorious because they have his love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. On top of all that, there is a fruit of the hereafter, which is embodied in that permanent blessing that they obtain in full without any reckoning. So those who are patient will be blessed with the joys of Jannah. إِنَّمَا يُوَفَّى الصَّابِرُونَ أَجْرَهُمْ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. The steadfast, the sabirun, those who are constantly at all times in a state of holding themselves or doing what is right that Allah wants them to do, will be paid their wages in full without any reckoning. So this is a reward of those who are sabirun, right? They will be paid their wages in full without any reckoning. They will be in a garden as white as the heavens and the earth, adorned with reverend angels greeting them. جنات عدن يدخلونها ومن صلح من آبائهم وأزواجهم وذرياتهم والملائكة يدخلون عليهم من كل باب سلام عليكم بما صبرتم فنعم عقبى الدار. Gardens of Eden, which they will enter, and all of their parents, wives, and children who are righteous. There's a disclaimer here that not all their wives and parents will go into heaven, but those who are righteous. Inshallah, Allah include us among the righteous ones and bless us with righteous offsprings. Angels will enter in to welcome them from every gate. Salamun alaikum, peace be upon you. Because of your steadfastness, you are in that blessed state because you were in control of yourself, right? You were able to hold yourself and not disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and keep on persevering in your obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How wonderful is the ultimate abode. Surah Ar-Ra'd, verse 23 to 24. The Rabb of might turns to it with forgiveness, victory, and pleasure. Inni jazaituhum. Inni jazaituhumul yawma bima sabaru annahum humul faizun. Today I have rewarded them for being steadfast. They are the ones who are victorious. It's very, very critical to hold yourself, right? To learn not to get angry easily, to learn not to be annoyed easily, to learn not to be irritated easily, right? And to obviously calm and cool. Why? Because you are with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you are among those whom Allah loves, and your reward in the next world is immense. They are mentioned in the Quran, all right, and their rewards are mentioned. They are the victorious one. Hum faizun, right? Those who achieve victory. Wabashir sabirin alladhina idha asabatuhum musibatun qalu inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Ulaika alayhim salawatum min rabbihim wa rahmah. And give good news to those who are patient. This is giving good news to the patients, those when a musibah befalls them. Give good news to the steadfast, those who when disaster strikes them say, we belong to Allah and to Him we will return. Those are the people who have blessings and mercy from their Rabb. So that is what it is. Whenever any disaster falls on you, you don't scream and shout and accuse and blame and get angry and whatever. You don't hold yourself, tell yourself you are from Allah and you will return to, which means that you know that you will go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah has created you in the best of forms because you belong to Allah. Whatever you do, you must do things for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We belong to Allah and we will return to Him. We are going to do whatever in this situation, which is really hard for me to take, but I know that Allah knows best and Allah loves me. Things happen. Allah is all wise in allowing this to happen. So I'm going to sit back, right, and pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and do the necessary that will help me to move on in life. So those are the people, Allah says, those are the people who have the blessings, salawat and mercy from their Rabb will send blessings and mercies, right? Despite the difficulty that they are going through, you can see them having lots of blessings and mercies from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the way they manage their lives, in holding themselves, in facing the trials that they are confronted with. One should take note of the victory Allah grants His believing slaves, the day when neither wealth nor children will be of any benefit except to those who come to Allah with sound hearts. Qalbun salim, right? So what is important is a heart that is pure, the heart that goes all out to do things for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the heart that is always aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the heart that has full reverence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. On that day, our children, our money will be useless to us. We do not work for them. We do not look. We do not live for those, right? Of course, our children, if they are good children, we bring them up well, then they will be of benefit to us. And our wealth, if we use our wealth in the best of manner for Allah, it will be good to us. What is important again is a heart. Good heart. This is a rephrasing of the Shura, Ashura. For everything mentioned above, patience is the best thing a person can be given. Rasulullah spoke the truth when he said, no one has been given a greater and vaster gift than patience. Those are cool, calm, composed, very dignified in many ways, right? They do not shout and scream and, nonsense. They are blessed, right? No one has been given a greater and vaster gift than patience. Patience is a great gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't easily get jolted. You don't easily jump. Could come and cool and think of how to move in any situation. This is agreed upon. relief from distress. Man is constantly dealing with trials and afflictions and is exposed to various kinds of tribulation. Matters become unbearable and oppressive for him. Things are sometimes so difficult that you feel as if everything is on you. You have no way out of these problems, such that he reaches a point in which grief and sorrow take over his soul. This is a reality of men, right? This is the nature of human. Things are difficult, things just move on, and you don't know how to go on, right? You feel with grief and sorrow, and he falls into distress. This is the situation of men. All of this is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala until the believer carves his path towards paradise with merit. So what is this? What is important is that there will be all kinds of trials and tribulations. As mentioned, trials come from within yourself. Trials come from your sickness and your disturbances and whatever. Trials come from outside of you, right? And calamities, natural calamities. Trials come from people and human animals and all other creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from outside of you. How do you manage them? When you don't allow them to become unbearable and oppressive. Because once you do that, then you will go into grief and sorrow, and then you will fall into distress. So what you have to do is to carve your path towards paradise with merit. That means you pass every single test along the way, and you pass with merit, not distinction. If he succeeds in the test and is thus patient and anticipates reward in the manner that has been described, does not become exasperated or despair, realizes that all of this is according to Allah, the Exalted's decree and predestination, and is thus content with it, and his soul trusts in it. So, how do you pass the test? You are patient. You know that by holding yourself, by not reacting in nonsensical ways, by not doing actions which are against laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know you will be rewarded, as described by the Prophet. He doesn't become exasperated and doesn't despair, and he realizes, most importantly, this hadith is about the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the predestination of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, especially in death. And death, as mentioned by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that death is fixed. Right? Nobody knows when you're going to die, but it's definitely going to die. Where you're going to die, Allah has fixed all this. It's quite interesting that I was listening to Hamza Yusuf conversation with Imran Khan, the ex-president of Pakistan. That Imran Khan actually said that when he was asked, aren't you afraid? Because he says, yes, being a president, he knows there's lots of mafia around, they're going to kill him, they're going to find ways and means to destroy him. But because he believes that Allah has fixed when he's going to die and where he's going to die, he's got no worries. He's content with it, and his soul trusts Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So whatever happens, Allah knows best. Allah knows best. Right? Yes, it can be very difficult for you. Things are just like something which you cannot believe would happen, and it did happen. So leave it to Allah. Allah knows best. Continue with the zikrs, continue with the salawats, continue to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all counts. Allah the Exalted solicitudes. Allah the Exalted solicitude seizes him. He is relieved of his grief. So he feels solace, happiness, joy, relief of his grief, because he knows he has full trust in Allah. Tawakkal to Allah. I leave my affairs to Allah. That's what it means, because I know He is the best disposer of affairs. He is relieved of his grief, sorrow is removed from his soul, he is freed from every oppression, and he is safe from every agony. That is the reality of one who turns to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He realizes that he comes from Allah, and he will return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is a clear victory and immense triumph in his life and the hereafter. You are able to overcome all challenges in life with calmness, with security, with a contentment, right? And go on living life despite all the trials and tribulations. Allah has saved you. There is a clear victory and an immense triumph in this life and the hereafter. This is when it becomes clear to the believing slave who has taqwa, that light bursts forth from within darkness. That abundant rain comes from dark clouds. So there's light within darkness. There's dark moments in life, there will be always light. And when there's dark clouds, there's rain, there's hope. And the distress he was in was only for some good that was willed for him. The relief will come from within his distress, and that this was for nothing other than the sincere slave be cut off from everything besides Allah. He attached his heart to his creator alone, a heart that is certain that the entire affair is in his hand. So this is what it is, right? So this is a state of the believer. He knew that there's some good in everything that Allah has willed. He has full trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He knew that Allah will never fail him. He knows that there will be relief will come from within this distress. There will be ease from, now it's difficult, but actually there is ease along the way. And that this difficulty that he's going through is nothing more than to make him realize, make him learn that he should not be attached to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His heart should be with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Leave everything to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Read this meaning in Allah's words. Am hasibtum an tadkhulul jannata walamma ya'tikum mathalul ladhina khalaw min qablikum massatuhumul ba'sa'u wad-dharra'u wa zulzilu hatta yaqula ar-rasulu wal ladhina amanu ma'ahu mata nasrullah ala inna nasrallahi qareeb. Or do you suppose that you would enter paradise without facing the same as those who came before you? Question from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do you think that you will enter paradise without going through trials and tribulations as those who were before you? Now, Allah described their trials and tribulations. Poverty and illness afflicted them. They were poor, they were sick, and they were shaken to the point that the messenger and those who believe with him said, when is Allah's help coming? So they were in such a great tribulation, they were shaken, right? And until so much so that those who were looking on at them, the messenger and those who believe with him said, when is Allah's help coming? Mata Nasrullah. Be assured, Allah, inna nasrallahi qareeb. Allah's help is very near. Must have trust that Allah will help you in all your times of difficulties. Right? Hold on to it. Be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah the Exalted has said, وَهُوَ الَّذِي يُنَزِّلُ الْغَيْثَ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا قَنَطُوا وَيَنْشُرُ رَحْمَتَهُ. It is He who sends down abundant rain after they have lost all hope and unfolds His mercies. An example, right, of mercies from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In this example given is when they are in a state of famine, drought, nothing at all, no hope whatsoever, and Allah sends down rain that is of His mercies. Maybe you can see this meaning clearly in the story of Ka'ab ibn Malik and his two companions when they stayed back from the Battle of Tabuk, and Rasulullah commanded people to dissociate from them. All right, so he's given an example, the story in the Quran, right, of Ka'ab. Ka'ab ibn Malik is one of the great Sahabas of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but somehow he was seduced to stay behind when everyone, and all the believers went off to Tabuk, right, to fight with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Tabuk is the place where they were fighting the Romans, right? So quite a number of hypocrites didn't go because they felt that there's no way the Muslims can overcome the Romans because the Romans are just powerful. And also the journey to Tabuk was really far and it was the very, very hot season. But Ka'ab ibn Malik was not one of the hypocrites, and he and two companions of Rasulullah actually stayed behind, right? Somehow they were tempted by their farm produce. the harvest. Then they were afflicted. So when Rasulullah came back, right, from the expedition, the hypocrites, all of them came one after another with all kinds of reasons and excuses, and Rasulullah just let them go. But when the three of them, Ka'ab ibn Malik and the two companions, came to explain why they didn't go, although the explanation was true, Rasulullah was not happy with them for not going. The explanation, the reason that they gave was not good enough for them not to come along with the truth. So Rasulullah ﷺ commanded the people to dissociate from them. Then they were afflicted with distress that they were afflicted with until, so they were so sad, they were so miserable, that Allah depicted their state in the Quran. Hatta idha daqat alayhimul ardu bima rahubat wa daqat alayhim anfusuhum wa dhannu an la malja'a min Allahi illa ilayh. The earth became narrow for them. That means nobody want to talk to them at all. They turned everywhere. No one want to be with them. They were boycotted to the core. Nobody is allowed to speak to them. So although they say the earth was so wide, it became narrow for them. They feel as if they are so constricted, they cannot go anywhere, they cannot move at all. And their own selves become constricted for them, and they realize that there was no refuge from Allah except Him. They realize that they have to turn to Allah. So this is what it means, you see. When you are in a state of distress, when you have no way out, you don't know what to do, everybody is turning against you. There's no way you can move in that land when everybody is supposed to be your friends, your relatives, your wives. Everybody was told to go against you by the instruction of Rasulullah. So that's what they were. And then they come to realize that they have to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and seek help from Him. So that is what it is said, that these trials bring them closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then there was relief and there was mercy. ثُمَّ تَابَ عَلَيْهِمْ لِيَتُوبُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ هُوَ التَّوَّابُ الرَّحِيمُ. He turned to them. So they turned to Him and He turned to them so that they might turn to Him. Allah is ever returning, the most merciful. Surah Tawbah, verse 118. You can see the same in the stories that the Quran relates to us. Stories of His prophets and saints being relieved of their distresses, and how Allah, the Exalted, honored His Prophet ﷺ in these kinds of situations. Lots of stories in the Quran. As we go through them, we'll see them. This makes us trust in Allah's, His companions, and desire His magnanimity whenever calamities intensify, adversity surrounds us, and distress becomes ingrained. So this is what it means that we need to put trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and desire His, we want to be close to Him. We desire His strength, His power, His might whenever calamities fall. All right, hardship and ease. You will notice that the meanings of the hadiths are closely tied together, some of them taking from the others. Hardship causes distress, and ease is one of the doors of relief. Everyone needs patience and durability, and behind that there is triumph and victory. So you need to hold yourself, you need to be strong, you need to be fortified, you need to know how to fortify yourself with all the zikrs and everything, right? And things will be easy, you will be triumphant and victorious. All of that is from Allah, Exalted's bounty and mercy towards His slaves. For as He has established a norm that hardship be followed by ease or connected to it. It's the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For every hardship, remember there will always be ease with it or after it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, سَيَجْعَلُ اللَّهُ بَعْدَ عُسْرِ يُسْرًا. He will appoint, or He will place after difficulty ease. So for every difficulty, you will get ease. And He has said, فَإِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. Inna ma'al usri yusra. For truly with hardship comes ease. Actually, ma'a, with them. Yeah, with hardship is ease, and with hardship is ease. So there is always ease in hardship. Despite the difficulties that we have to go through, right, we will have ease because of our strong faith and trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the ease is when we get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala despite the difficulties that we have to go through. That is why He subhanahu wa ta'ala has only legislated for His slaves that which contains ease. Yuridullahu bikumul yusra wa la yuridu bikumul usra. Allah desires ease for you. He does not desire difficulty for you. You must have trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You must know that Allah wants things to be easy for you. You need to hold yourself. And He has lifted them that which contains adversity, difficulty, and hardship. So He has removed from them. وَمَا جَعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ. And He has not placed any constraint upon you in the religion. Religion is not difficult. It is there to make life easy for you, to make life good for you. Al-Bazzar has related in his Musnad from the hadith of Anas that Rasulullah SAW said, if hardship were to come and enter, this whole ease would come so that it could enter and remove it. So trust that whatever hardship you have, you will always have ease because Allah is there with you. You leave your affairs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah then revealed, فَإِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. For surely with the difficulty there is lots of ease, and with the difficulty there is lots of ease. This is a the here, and this is immense ease. His words are emphasizing that hardship and difficulty are never prolonged for a person. As long as he is content with what Allah, the glorified, has predestined for him, he adheres to what Allah has commanded and forbidden, seeks refuge in Him alone, and trusts Him to turn his hardship into peace. And this is all the ingredients of sabr. وَمَنْ يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. And whoever puts his trust on Allah, then he is enough. Who puts his trust in Allah, He will be enough for him. Always recite this whenever you're in difficulty. وَمَنْ يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. Remember, Allah is enough. Legal matters from the hadith. If a riding animal is strong and its rider or owner knows that it is capable of carrying more than one person, he can place one or more people behind him according to his capacity. If he knows that it is not capable, he is not permitted to do so. Right? So you must believe, strong belief, and you can handle and carry as much as you can carry. But if you're not strong, then you're not able to carry anything. It is advisable that the teacher catch a student's attention and mention that he wants to teach him, because Rasulullah said, Ya Ghulam, I want to teach you something. Before starting to give him information, this will penetrate his soul. His yearning of knowledge intensifies, and he accepts it. So it's a beautiful way of talking to a student. Ya Ghulam, oh my children, today I'm going to teach you something really important. Right? Whoever is upon truth and calls to it, enjoins the right or forbids the wrong, will not be harmed by the plotting of oppressors, but the trickery of Allah's enemies will always be thwarted. Whatever the case is, remember, as long as you do it good, yes, things might not be good along the way. Rasulullah 13 years of in Mecca, it wasn't easy, but Allah gave him victory in Medina. They cannot stop. If Allah allows it to happen, then Allah has His wisdom there. Believe in the wisdom and the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A Muslim must carry out his obligations, such as doing acts of obedience and living that which is wrong, enjoining the right and forbidding the wrong, without listening to those who try to scare him about the consequences, those who have weak faith and certainty. That means they don't have enough yaqeen in their heart. They are afraid to go out and advise people, because what Allah has predestined for him will inevitably hit him. So whatever is going to happen will definitely happen. All right, we're going to stop here today. Allahumma anta rabbi la ilaha illa anta khalaqtani wa ana abduka wa ana ala ahdika wa wa'dika mastata'tu a'udzu bika min syarri ma sana'tu abu laka bi ni'matika alayya wa abu bi dhanbi faghfir li innahu la yaghfiru dhunuba illa anta. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbana anfa'na bima 'allamtana. ربي علمنا الذي ينفعنا ربي فقهنا وفقه أهلنا وقرابات لنا في ديننا مع أهل القتر أنثى وذكر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلى الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته